Let's take a moment right now, a short moment, just a few minutes, and imagine that everything could shift. Just like that, not because of luck, not because of some big event, but because you finally stopped to listen to the quiet truth that's been whispering inside you. That truth that says there's more for you, not more things, not more noise, more life. You see, most people don't need more years. They need 6 clear minutes. 6 minutes where they finally face the reality of where they are and where they're going. And in that space, they begin to make new choices, small ones, but powerful ones. 6 minutes of honest reflection has the power to unlock what 10 years of drifting never will. Why? Because when you stop the noise, when you put the phone down, turn off the distractions, and just listen, you begin to see. You begin to see how far you've wandered from the person you said you'd become. And that awareness, even though it stings, is the beginning of something new. People often wait for a new year, a new opportunity, or someone else to show up and change things. But nothing changes until you do. And you don't need a new year to start. You need a decision. You need a few minutes of clarity. That's it. And in those minutes, your entire world can start to turn. Now think about this. How many days, how many months have passed by where you didn't pause to evaluate? You just kept moving, kept doing, hoping that somewhere along the line the pieces would fall into place. But hope isn't a strategy, and motion isn't progress. Sometimes we confuse being busy with being effective. But deep down, you know when you're hiding, you know when you're avoiding the real work, you know when you're living below your potential. And in just a few minutes, you can bring that truth to light, not to judge yourself, but to wake up. This is the kind of moment most people avoid. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It challenges the stories we tell ourselves to stay the same. But growth never happens in comfort. It happens in awareness. And awareness comes when you slow down, look inward, and ask the hard questions. Who am I becoming? What habits are shaping me? What am I allowing in my life that's keeping me small? These questions don't take hours, they take minutes, just 6 focused, intentional minutes, and those minutes, when done with honesty, will change you. You see, transformation doesn't begin with action. It begins with vision, a vision of who you could be if you stopped waiting, a vision of what your life could look like if you stopped settling. And once that vision is clear, the energy shows up. The discipline shows up, the hunger shows up, but first, you've got to stop running and look, really look. Not at your bank account, not at your social media, not at what others are doing. Look at you, because you are the one steering the ship. You are the one making the daily decisions. And if you can give yourself 6 uninterrupted minutes to get real, you can begin to take back the wheel. There's something sacred about silence, about stepping away from the rush of the world to step into the stillness of your own mind. That's where your answers are. That's where your clarity is. But we're not taught to do this. We're taught to chase. Chase achievement, chase validation, chase more, but never stop and evaluate what it's all adding up to. That's why this moment matters. That's why 6 minutes of truth telling is more valuable than 6 months of chasing noise. And I'll tell you this, once you experience even a glimpse of real clarity, once you feel what it's like to be present, intentional, and honest, you won't want to go back to sleep. You'll realize how much time you've lost living on autopilot, and that realization, painful as it may be, is the very thing that will ignite change, because clarity leads to choice, and choice, repeated over time, leads to transformation. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need permission, You don't need to know every step. All you need is to stop, breathe, and begin. And if you're willing to do that just for a few minutes each day, you'll see something shift, not on the outside, but on the inside. That shift is where real success starts, not with money, not with status, with clarity. And clarity always comes when you slow down and give yourself the space to reflect. Most people will skip this. They'll say they're too busy. They'll look for shortcuts. But nothing replaces this. Nothing is more powerful than the moment you finally choose to see. Discipline isn't a punishment, it's a gift. It's the bridge between who you are and who you could become. Most people hear the word and they cringe. They associate it with restriction, with something harsh or rigid. But let me tell you something real. Discipline is the secret door to freedom. You don't rise to your potential automatically. You rise when you take control of your daily choices. You rise when you decide, no matter how you feel, that you'll act based on your commitments, not your emotions. You see, everyone has desires. Everyone wants success, wants growth, wants to become something greater. But very few are willing to pay the price. And the price isn't some big, dramatic sacrifice. It's small. It's quiet. It's boring to most. It looks like showing up early, reading when no one's watching, saying no when your friends say yes, doing the work even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient. That's discipline, and it doesn't show results overnight, which is why most people quit. They want to feel good now. But if you keep chasing now, you'll keep missing next. Discipline is the ability to govern yourself when no one else is watching. It's the foundation of all success. You can dream all day. You can set goals. You can visualize. But without discipline, nothing happens. Because dreams are free, but the grind, the growth, the mastery, that costs something. And it's paid in the currency of consistency. You show me someone successful, and I'll show you someone who's been disciplined long after the excitement left. Because motivation starts you, but discipline sustains you. Every day, you're building something whether you realize it or not. You're building habits, you're building routines, you're shaping your character. And the question is, are you doing it by design or by default? Most people build by default. They don't mean to waste hours. They don't mean to slip into laziness. It just happens slowly, quietly. But discipline demands design. It asks you to take responsibility. To say, I choose this. That's powerful. That's how you reclaim your life from distractions. There's a lie going around that says you have to feel inspired to take action. That's not true. Action leads to feeling. You act first, then the emotion follows. You don't wait to feel like working out. You train your body and your mind to show up anyway. You don't wait to feel like reading. You open the book and dive in. Because if you only act when you feel like it, you'll rarely act at all. Discipline teaches you to lead yourself. And here's the secret. The first step is the hardest. The first 5 minutes of anything difficult always feels heavier than it is. But if you can push through that initial resistance, you tap into momentum. Momentum is a powerful thing, and discipline is how you access it. The more you practice discipline, the stronger you get at it. It becomes your default mode, not because it's easier, but because it's who you're becoming. And once discipline becomes part of your identity, you don't have to fight yourself as hard anymore. People often say they're tired. They say they lack motivation. But the truth is, most of that fatigue comes from indecision, from the mental battle of knowing what you should do but not doing it. When you live that way, you carry a kind of heaviness. But when you practice discipline, you eliminate that mental tug-of-war. You decide once, you commit, and then you act. That clears mental space, that builds inner peace. That's where your confidence begins to grow, not from talking big, but from keeping promises to yourself. Start with one area. Maybe it's your morning, maybe it's your nutrition, maybe it's your time on your phone. Choose one area where you know you've been loose, where you know you've been cheating yourself, and tighten it up. Just a little, not because you have to, but because that's the kind of person you want to become. And every act of discipline reinforces that identity. It tells your mind, your body, your future, I'm serious, I'm committed, I'm no longer living on autopilot. You see, the world will try to pull you in 100 directions, and without discipline, you'll drift. You'll get lost in the noise, but when you have discipline, you become dangerous, you become focused, you become resilient because now you're living with structure. Now you're not reacting to life, you're creating it. You're not waiting to feel good to take action, you're letting your actions shape how you feel. And that changes everything. Because now you're not a victim of circumstance, you're the architect. You're building something, one disciplined choice at a time. There comes a time in every person's life when they must stop looking out the window and start looking into the mirror. Because that's where the truth lives. That's where the answers have been hiding all along. Not in the opinions of others. Not in the opportunities you've been waiting on, but in the reflection staring back at you. That mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't make excuses. It simply reflects who you've become and asks a simple question. Is this the person you promised yourself you'd be? The mirror test is the most powerful test you'll ever take, and it can happen in the quietest moment of your day. No crowd, no applause, no one watching, just you and your reality. And if you have the courage to take that test honestly, it will change you. It won't always be easy, because the truth can sting. The truth can expose the habits that have gone unchecked, the corners you've been cutting, the goals you've abandoned. But that same truth is the beginning of transformation. Because when you finally stop blaming the world, your circumstances, or your past, and you look in the mirror and say, "This is on me," that's when you take your power back. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding that mirror. They distract themselves with noise, with entertainment, with busyness. Because if they were to pause, if they were to really stop and reflect, they'd have to confront a hard fact. They've been drifting. They've been going through the motions. They've been living someone else's idea of success. But that confrontation, as uncomfortable as it is the moment the real journey begins. It's the moment you stop lying to yourself, because that's what most failure is. A series of small lies told to yourself over time. I'll start tomorrow. I don't have time. It's not the right moment. Lies, quiet ones, but they compound. And eventually, they build a life you didn't choose. But the mirror sees through all of that. It sees what you do when no one is watching. It sees whether your actions align with your values. And if they don't, it calls you out, not to shame you, but to wake you up, because the gap between who you are and who you want to be doesn't close on its own. It closes when you face yourself with honesty and decide to do better. You can read all the books, you can watch all the videos, but none of it matters if you're not willing to do the mirror work, the personal work, the kind that doesn't show up on your resume. The kind that asks you questions like, am I showing up with integrity? Am I really giving my best? Am I living with purpose or just passing time? These aren't questions you ask once. These are questions you ask daily, because growth is not a one-time decision. It's a way of life, and that life is shaped not by what you want, but by what you're willing to confront. There's a reason why the mirror test is so rare, because it's personal, it's raw. It doesn't allow you to hide behind excuses. It strips you down to your choices, and the more you avoid it, the further you drift from the person you were meant to become. But when you embrace it, when you make it a practice to look yourself in the eyes and speak the truth, you begin to build a foundation of real confidence. Not the kind that comes from external success, but the kind that comes from knowing you're living in alignment with your highest values. And the truth is, no one can take this test for you. No one else knows what you've been avoiding. No one else knows the promises you've broken to yourself. But you do, and the mirror reminds you. That's why it's sacred, because it doesn't care about your reputation. It cares about your character, and character is what you build when no one's watching. Character is built when you hold yourself accountable, when you choose discipline over comfort, honesty over ease. If you want real change, you don't start with goals. You start with identity, and identity is shaped in the mirror. Not in one big breakthrough, but in the daily decisions to show up, to rise higher, to face yourself even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, because growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence, from showing up for yourself again and again, even after failure, even after setbacks. Take 6 minutes, stand in front of the mirror and ask the hard questions. Look beyond your face. Look into your eyes. Are you proud of who you're becoming? Are you growing? Are you honest with yourself? If not, don't run from it. Lean into it, because the person in that mirror is the only one who can change your life. And the moment you choose truth over comfort is the moment your life starts to move in a new direction. Time is the most valuable resource you will ever have. Yet it's the one most people treat with the least amount of respect. You can earn back money, you can rebuild relationships, you can recover from mistakes, but you cannot reclaim time once it's gone. And what's tragic is that most people realize this too late. They reach the end of a week, a year, a decade, and wonder where it all went. But the truth is, it didn't just go anywhere. It was spent minute by minute, choice by choice, either with intention or by accident. You have the same 24 hours as every great achiever in history. The same clock that ticked for those who changed the world ticks for you. But the difference is how they used it. While some wasted their hours on complaints and distraction, others built empires, grew ideas, studied wisdom, and cultivated the kind of focus that moved mountains. That wasn't luck. That was clarity. That was an understanding that time is not to be managed. It is to be honored. Think about this. Every morning you are given 440 minutes. That's a gift, not a guarantee, a gift. And in those minutes lies the potential to reshape your mind, strengthen your body, grow your skills, heal your relationships, build your legacy. But only if you use them. Time does not respond to wishful thinking. It responds to action. It responds to discipline. You don't need more time. You need to make better use of the time you already have. The tragedy is that we often wait. We say, I'll start when I have more time. But more time never comes, because if you don't value a free hour today, you won't value 10 hours tomorrow. Time doesn't change your habits. You do. The problem isn't a lack of time. It's a lack of priority. And when you don't know what matters, everything feels urgent. Everything feels important. So you scatter your minutes across 100 meaningless tasks and end the day with nothing to show for it. There is a difference between being busy and being effective. Many people wear busyness like a badge of honor. They say they're always working, always doing something. But movement doesn't equal progress. Running in circles still leaves you in the same place. If your time isn't tied to a clear vision, then you're just reacting. And a reactive life is always a step behind, always at the mercy of circumstances. But when you choose how to spend your time with purpose, everything changes. You become proactive. You become powerful. Take a close look at where your time goes. How much of it is spent building your future? How much of it is spent protecting your health, your peace, your vision? And how much of it slips through your fingers without a trace? A scroll here, a distraction there, and before you know it, the day is gone. That's not just a lost day, that's a lost opportunity. Because every day is a brick in the foundation of your life. And if you waste enough days, you build a life you didn't mean to live. That's why 6 minutes matters. Just 6 focused minutes can do what 6 hours of scattered effort can't. 6 minutes of journaling, planning, reflecting, breathing, whatever it is, if it's intentional, it's powerful. Don't underestimate what you can do in a small window of time. The secret is depth, not duration. You don't need an entire afternoon to change your mindset. You need a few undistracted minutes, but you have to protect those minutes like gold. Time is not a burden. It's a gift. It's your chance to rise. And every time you use it well, you reinforce your values. You tell yourself, my future matters. My purpose matters. My growth matters. And that message begins to rewire your brain. It builds momentum. It builds self-respect. You stop waiting for time and start commanding it, and suddenly your days don't feel rushed. They feel structured. They feel rich, not because you crammed them full, but because you filled them with meaning. The question you have to ask yourself isn't, do I have time? It's, am I willing to value time enough to change how I live? Because until you do, time will keep slipping by. And you'll keep making the same promises, starting the same habits, quitting the same routines. But when you decide, truly decide, that your time is sacred, everything shifts. You no longer tolerate waste. You no longer say yes to distractions disguised as obligations. You start to measure your hours by impact, not by how busy they felt. And that shift creates power. Time is also the great revealer. It shows you what matters most by what you give it to. If your calendar is filled with things that drain you, distract you, or delay you, it's not a time problem. It's an alignment problem. You have to look closely, because how you spend your time is how you live your life. And if you want a better life, it starts with better hours, better minutes, better choices, not someday. Not when it's convenient, but now, because the clock doesn't stop. The world keeps turning, and the only question is, are you turning with it or letting it pass you by? If you want to change your life, you don't start with the outside. You don't begin with your circumstances, your job, or even your habits. You begin with identity, because who you believe you are sets the limit on what you're willing to do, how far you're willing to go, and what you'll allow yourself to receive. You can have all the tools, all the opportunities, all the information. But if your identity doesn't match the life you're trying to build, you'll sabotage your progress every time. You'll work hard, but you'll never allow yourself to truly arrive, because deep down, you don't believe you're the kind of person who succeeds. So the work isn't just external, it's internal, it's identity work. Most people build their identity by accident. They let the world, their past, their failures, or other people define them. Maybe someone told them they were lazy, and they believed it. Maybe they failed once, and now they call themselves a quitter. Maybe life knocked them down, and now they walk like they belong at the bottom. But that's not identity, that's programming. That's a false narrative shaped by moments of pain, not moments of truth. And if you don't rewrite that story, it will keep you stuck, no matter how hard you try to move forward. Real change happens when you stop chasing goals and start upgrading your identity. Because when your identity is right, the actions follow. You don't have to force yourself to wake up early. You just do. Because you see yourself as someone who values time. You don't have to push yourself to work hard. You just work because you've become someone who doesn't settle for average. It's not a battle every day when your actions align with who you believe you are. That's the key. Your identity is the engine behind your behavior. The fastest way to change your identity is through consistency, not intensity, not one big burst of effort, but daily repetition of who you want to be, 6 minutes a day, 6 minutes of speaking a new truth to yourself, 6 minutes of writing down the kind of person you're becoming, 6 minutes of aligning your decisions with your future, not your past. Because identity is built through repetition, and the more often you show up as your future self, the more that version of you becomes normal. Natural, real. But here's what most people do. They wait to feel different before they act different. They say, when I feel confident, I'll step up. When I feel motivated, I'll start. But that's backwards. You don't wait to feel it. You do it until you become it. You act like the person you want to be, even when it feels fake. Even when it's uncomfortable. That's the process. And over time, your identity starts to shift. Not because you hoped for it, but because you lived it. The words you speak to yourself every day shape your identity more than anything else. If you keep saying, I'm just not disciplined, I always quit, I'm too old, I'm too young, then guess what? Your mind will accept that story and build your behavior around it. But if you begin to speak a different story, one rooted in strength, not weakness, your actions will start to follow. I am becoming consistent. I am learning to lead. I am building the life I deserve. These aren't just affirmations. These are instructions. They tell your subconscious mind what kind of future to move toward. Your environment also plays a role. If you constantly surround yourself with people who reinforce your old identity, who expect you to stay the same, who get uncomfortable when you start to grow, then you're going to feel torn. Because the human brain wants to stay consistent with the people around it. So if you want to build a new identity, you have to guard your circle. You have to choose input that feeds your new path. Books, voices, energy. You have to curate your environment to support your transformation, not sabotage it. And understand this, your identity isn't fixed, it's flexible, it's fluid. Just because you've been a certain way for years doesn't mean that's who you are. It just means that's who you've practiced being. And if practice got you there, new practice can take you somewhere else. You can rewire your beliefs. You can reshape your behaviors. You can step into a new way of living. But it starts with giving yourself permission to outgrow your old self. You don't owe the past version of you anything. You only owe the future version your full commitment. You were not born with limits. You learned them. And anything that is learned can be unlearned. Anything that is trained can be retrained. Anything that is built can be rebuilt. That's the hope. That's the opportunity. But you've got to decide what kind of person you're becoming. Not just in your words, but in your daily choices. You've got to cast votes for the identity you want to reinforce. And every choice is a vote. Every decision is a message to your brain. This is who I am. You don't get the life you want by chasing outcomes. You get it by becoming the person who naturally attracts and sustains those outcomes. You want wealth. Become someone who manages money wisely. You want health. Become someone who honors their body. You want peace. Become someone who protects their mind. The identity always comes first. The results follow. And if you want to accelerate your growth, stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "Who do I need to become?" Because when you change who you are, you change what becomes possible. If you truly grasp what we've explored, you'll understand that your life doesn't shift in years. It shifts in moments, in decisions, in quiet commitments made when no one is looking. 6 minutes of clarity, 6 minutes of discipline, 6 minutes of reflection, intention, and truth. That's all it takes to begin again. The path forward isn't complicated, but it does require honesty. It requires the courage to stop pointing outward and start looking inward, to respect your time, to reshape your identity, and to take full ownership of the life you're building. This isn't about motivation that fades. This is about transformation that lasts, and it begins when you choose to act not someday, but today. Not for an hour, not for a week, but for 6 minutes of complete presence, repeated day after day. Do that, and you won't just change your schedule. You'll change your mindset. You'll change your future. You'll change your life.